Dad's Diner, the best food in the house. Welcome back to Dad's Diner. Today we're going to be doing an extended episode. This is going to be what I call making the most of your chicken roast. So, we've got a nice 7-pound chicken here, and when I roast a chicken, I don't like to waste anything. There are a lot of different things that you can do besides just cook the chicken and eat the meat. You can make gravy out of the giblets and pan drippings. You can make soup out of the carcass and some additional vegetables and seasonings. So that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. We're going to start with the chicken itself, and we're also going to make the gravy at the same time as we're doing the chicken. And then in part 2 we will do the soup. So let's start with the giblets and the gravy before we start putting the chicken in the oven. So your roaster chicken, many of them will come with the giblets in a package, which will be stuffed inside the body cavity, wrapped in some butcher paper. So you open this up, and what we have inside here are a few bits of chicken, such as this long thing here is the neck. We're going to take the neck and we're going to put it in a pot and start making a little chicken stock. And also in here you have the heart, the liver, the gizzard, and we're going to chop those all up, and that's going into flavoring the stock. It's not going to go directly into the gravy, but it's going to give a lot of its flavor and nutrients to the gravy. So we take the pot and put in just enough water to cover the chicken neck, and then we put in a few herbs. Not a great deal because it's a small pot, but I like to put in the herbs. Remember the old traditional folk song, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme? Well, those are the ones that I like to use. So there's the parsley, a little bit of sage, and be careful with your containers. We'll sprinkle a bit of rosemary. Now that's the thyme actually. Sprinkle a bit of thyme in there.
No.
Just a dash of rosemary. Okay, so now the pot with the chicken neck and the seasonings is ready to go on the stove, and we are just going to let that simmer at low heat for several hours. The chicken itself is going to cook for about 2.5 hours, and we want this to be making a nice stock for all of that time. And what that's going to do is that plus the pan drippings are going to form the basis for our gravy. So put that on the stove, and then we'll go on to the next step. While our chicken neck is simmering on the stove, I chopped up a few vegetables, just a small amount because it's a small pot, but I got some carrots, 2 or 3 baby carrots should be sufficient, a little bit of celery, about half a stalk, and an equal amount of white onion. We're really kind of making a miniature chicken soup here to be our chicken stock. So we get all of these finely diced up veggies and we put them together, and we are going to put those in the little pot to simmer with the chicken neck while I chop up the bloody chicken parts.
Okay.
Now while the vegetables are simmering, I have chopped up the giblets and diced them up really fine. They're also ready to go in that little pot. Just a historical reference for you here. If you're younger, you might have heard some older people, or maybe heard it on an old movie or Warner Brothers cartoon saying, "What am I, chopped liver?" And people usually say that if they're feeling ignored, not being paid attention to. The implication is that chopped liver is something that nobody wants to see or touch or even think about. Now this mass here, this is actual chopped liver. So, draw your own conclusions. So we will take the chopped liver along with the chopped gizzard and chopped heart, and we will put that all into the little pot, and that's going to simmer and become our chicken stock, which we'll use for our gravy. Next we'll move on to the chicken itself. Before we put the chicken in the oven, we want to season it. You can do an unseasoned chicken, but that's kind of bland. So I put together a blend of herbs and spices. Unlike Colonel Sanders, I didn't use 13. You can pretty much, if you've got a spice rack, herbs, spices, whatever you got in the kitchen. I used mostly parsley, oregano, powdered thyme, a little bit of paprika, a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of marjoram, and mix them all together in a bowl. And then what we're going to do is take up the skin of the chicken. Now I used a small sharp knife to cut some of these areas where the skin is attaching to the meat. And you want to get the skin over the breast and also the skin down here where the breast connects to the legs and thighs. So you got that meat exposed, and that is where you want to rub your seasoning mix. And this is kind of messy, but you can do it all with your fingers. Between this and chopping up the giblets, you really have to come to terms with the fact that this thing you're eating was once a living creature. But, I like chicken. I've never really minded that concept. So, we put the seasonings around the legs and thighs, around the breast, a little bit on each side around these legs here, and that will give it a nice savory flavor when it's all cooked. And anything that's left over we can put inside the hollow of the body cavity, so it's gonna smell and taste really nice once this is all cooked up. Alright, so got the seasonings and it's almost ready to go in the oven. Now the recipes generally recommend putting some water in the bottom of the pan just to keep it from burning and to keep it tender. I like to use a can of beer. Beer is a very handy thing to cook with. It gives it a nice smell, it tenderizes the meat, it keeps the meat from sticking to the bottom of the pan while we're cooking, and finally it's going to give a little extra flavoring to the gravy once we make the gravy, which is going to be made out of this mix here, which is cooking. This is simmering away. This is our giblets plus vegetables plus seasonings. So that plus the pan drippings is going to make us a nice gravy once it's all said and done. So now we are ready for it to go into the oven.
2 hours later.
And now, after a little more than 2 hours in the oven, our chicken is cooked. You can see the Purdue fancy little pop-up thermometer has popped, and it is sitting in its drippings, which we are going to use in just a little bit. And now let's go over to the stove and take a look at the stock that we have also been simmering for the past few hours. So here you can see the chicken stock with some vegetables and meat bits that's been simmering away for a few hours. The neck is really something that, one of the few things I can't find a use for, so I'm just going to drop that in the slop bucket. We don't really need that. And then we are going to strain the stock into this pan here and start using that to make our gravy. So I have a strainer, and I just take this and slowly pour the liquid parts into the pan, and the solid parts stay in the strainer. And Okay, then I am going to turn the burner up to a low heat, like a 3, and then I'm going to call on my assistant Sebastian. And over the sink we are going to, Seb, move over like this so we can actually see it. So we're just going to put this stuff in a bag. As I said, we are making the most of this chicken. We are not going to waste anything. So we're going to take these scraps and save them in the refrigerator until tomorrow morning when we make the soup. And these seasonings and vegetables and bits of meat will add some flavor to the soup when we get it started. And if you don't like liver, don't worry. Those pieces of liver are so small that you will barely even notice they're there when you're eating the soup. Okay, thank you, Sebastian. Now we have a cup full of pan drippings, and we will pour this in with the chicken stock. We've skimmed off most of the fat. Fatty gravy is not really very good, but now we've got that, and now we need to thicken it. And to do that, you simply take some flour, and what I do, I don't have a flour sifter, but I've been doing this by hand for a while. I just sort of gently sift it from the spoon onto the top of the hot liquid, and once it's all coated, we'll stir it in there so it mixes up. There's a few lumps, but they will eventually break up. I'm going to stir it with a fork later on specifically to break up the lumps. But you have to do this repeatedly. It's going to take several applications of gravy, of flour, in order to make good gravy. But that's where we're going to leave it for now, and while the gravy is cooking, I'm going to serve the chicken. And now the main course is served here at Dad's Diner. We've got the chicken on the table, accompanied by some vegetables and some rice. The favorite part of the chicken with both of my faithful diners is the legs, so we have got both the legs served tonight. And that's the main course, the roast. The gravy is still graving, and we will take care of that in just a little bit. And then tomorrow we will start on the soup. And now, after about a half hour of stirring and sifting in the flour, we have a nice pot of chicken gravy. It was sadly one of the more lumpy gravies that I've made, but you know, you boil it and stir it for long enough and those lumps will soften and break up. So we're going to turn off the heat on this and pour it into a little pot. I will have some of it with my chicken tonight, and I will save the rest of it for future meals. So that is part 1 of making the most of your chicken roast. Join us again tomorrow morning when we start doing the soup.